So, our presenter this evening is the one and only member of our group, Olivia Streater. And Olivia joined us in London for our conference this past weekend, and we want her back for more. Uh, Olivia is a dance artist, choreographer, and dance movement EMDR therapist. The title of this workshop is Embracing Our Unique Selves, Arts-Based Recovery as a Path to Self-Acceptance and Neurodivergent Pride. And with that, I'm going to just turn it over to Olivia.
Hello, everybody. I am Olivia, and I think I met some of you in London, which was awesome. I'm still buzzing off that conference. And Patrick asked me to do a thing on Friday. So I don't know. Let's see. I've kind of thrown it together. So what did I want to say before we started? Well, yeah, like I said in London, like I don't want to just kind of gab around my life story because like yawn, basically. So I thought I'd kind of mix in some practical stuff with a bit of story. And I kind of want to go with how can dance support us in recovery, but especially if we're neurodivergent in any way. And neurodivergent is quite a big, expansive term that actually nobody owns. There's a really beautiful paper recently around the origins of neurodiversity and neurodivergence as being collective, not from one person. I think it's really important to say. So it isn't just ADHD and autism and pathological demand avoidance and everything else. It can also be CPTSD, PTSD, it could be BPD, it could be epilepsy, a traumatic brain injury, etc. But I mean, I've done research in this area, but I'm kind of coming more from lived experience, and as so many other women actually and people, as a late life person, I got sought out diagnoses and I got the stamp, I got the label of ADHD, and then more recently autism. And probably you all know, but now there's quite interesting research coming out about the overlap and the links between ADHD and autism. And I think it's like a massive underexplored area as well, like the link between ADHD and autism and addiction. And there is somebody who actually, I think, Patrick, we should invite this person on. The website's called Emergent Divergence. It's the only person that I've come across, an autistic person who's been writing around the experience of autistic people in 12-step rooms. So it's kind of like a growing area. Which I can't, yeah, it's an enormous area, it's an expansive area, and there's so much that we could say. There's so much, what is the interplay between what we call neurodivergence and trauma, and where does one start and where does one stop? And we just can't cover that in 45 minutes. But I will say that I'm kind of interested in exploring that in my body through my lived body, and made a dance piece on that last year, looking at, does my body know the difference between what we call, for example, CPTSD, which, let's face it, most of us in recovery probably have, and ADHD. And so I've had a bit of I'm coming from this as an Al-Anon. That's kind of my main, where I'm coming from. But as an Al-Anon, I'm, it's not something that happens to people over there. It's absolutely, for me, it's work this stuff like your life depends upon it, because it does, basically, for me. And I feel like my journey, and so many of us in these rooms, including many people here, are deeply artistic, have incredible artistic talents, maybe are carrying a lot of pain from those wasted years, from maybe not having been able to express that, and the kind of frustration around that. I mean, it's a cliche, right? Around like, the tortured, the addict artist. Like, we know this is a thing, right? We know that there's a link between high sensitivity let's call it that, and addiction. And so my journey with dance has definitely been intimately related with my journey with recovery. And I feel like today I'm coming at it from the place of like learning how to value my quote unquote sensitivity. I think in a big book, you can get a little bit, you know, we can what's the word? I can't swear. Yeah, sometimes we kind of berate, look down on, I don't know, sensitivity. You know, it's this, you know, the words in the big, this emotional childishness and oversensitivity and la la. And yeah, I mean, sure, right? We 100%. For me, it's like I grew up when I came into these rooms. I'm still learning how to grow up, even though I'm going to be 50 this year. It's probably going to carry on for another 50 years if I'm lucky to get another 50 years. But I also think, at least my personal experience has been through dance, I've learned how to value my sensitivity. And I think for me, it's also the same with neurodivergence. My experience personally has been, I can't, I have to learn to work with those traits in order to live a life that is tolerable and not incredibly painful. It doesn't work to hate on them. It doesn't work to try and make them something else. Yeah, and that's kind and dance has helped me with that. And yeah, I mean, quickly on my, so I think I started dancing when I was about 3. I kind of went to it quite naturally. It was like a response to the chaos that was going around at home. I wanted to do it professionally, but when I left school, like at 17, I mean, I couldn't even, it literally hurt to move. It was actually physically painful to move. There was nowhere I was going to be able to get through dance school. And then I just, in that very binary way that we like, black and white, good, bad, shut the door. That's it. Not moving anymore. No more dance. Went off to university, did something else completely different for several years. And was quite depressed. That's an understatement in those years. And came back to dance. I actually came back to dance through medical trauma and various other traumas that I'd had in my 20s, because as I'm sure many of you have also experienced, you know, when we have childhood trauma, it often predisposes us to having subsequent trauma as adults. And yeah, so it grew, and in the end I trained as a dance therapist and a contemporary dancer, and started doing that when, I suppose, in a way, most people are finishing. And if it hadn't been for recovery, if it hadn't been for 12 steps, I don't think I would have done any of it. I would have been stuck in my depression, my imposter syndrome, my rejection sensitivity, my it's too late, I'm not good enough, who am I, no, all of this stuff, you know. I remember my first sponsor was really clear about, you know, the program and recovery, not just the recovery in general, it is not just about managing, although that is a really important part of it, especially for those of us who have CPTSD. There's nothing wrong with managing, I think. Like, there's not, you know, we're not failing if we still need to do day-to-day management of our state forever. And also like going towards being happy, joyous, and free. So I had a little think about, yeah, I'm going to throw out some things, and then I wanted to offer a little bit of a sort of mini session, and let's see. And actually, I should have said this before. So anything that I offer in terms of movement, please take it as an offer. So many of us have had experiences, especially around teaching, with like coercion and feeling a lack of autonomy. So even before we start, if you want to camera off, camera on, please choose I won't be offended by lots of black screens. No requirement to do anything. If you want to take a moment now to get comfortable, if you're not comfortable, and just notice, like if you're sitting, if you want to lie or just shift your position, like please go ahead and do that. And obviously, yeah, I wanted to share some of the things that I have in my house that I use. So if anybody wants to do this throughout the session, you're very welcome. I've got a collection of, hang on, I'm going to get the other one. Different things that I have, which I find really help me. balls like this that can be so useful to like move across our bodies, and bigger ones like this as well. And actually, I also have a swing in my house. There's something about like rocking and swinging rhythms that can be so helpful, not just for those of us who are autistic and ADHD, but actually for all of us. So yeah, so dance has helped me manage my state, right? Because when, as people with CPTSD or as addicts, like most of the time we're not here, we're there or we're there. And that shows up in a really physical way, at least with me, like being stuck between this fight and flight and freeze all at the same time. You know, maybe some people can relate to the thing when you wake up in the morning and it's like you're revving and you want to get going and you're also paralyzed at the same time. It's a really disabling state to be in. And for me, I mean, I love yoga. I trained as a yoga teacher also, but as somebody who finds it inordinately difficult to keep still and also likes to express, there's something for me about dance, which was just, it's an easier way, and particularly coming to breathing, right? Because, you know, we all know that we should breathe, right? Step 11, prayer and meditation. But in my experience, for so many of us, and for me included, at a really early age, we stop breathing, like literally here, because the body is holding and it's not safe. And on a really deep level, the body knows it's not safe to breathe. And my experience with trying to do breathing exercises in other places was like, just I couldn't get over this resistance to breathing. And it was like doing it through dance, the incidental kind of movement. You don't even notice that it's working with your breathing. I found that really helpful. So, and I think that there's something we'll play maybe with some of these movements, giving ourselves what we didn't get. You know, we know a lot about developmental trauma. Of course, I just want to say, obviously, neurodivergence isn't trauma, but obviously it can often lead to trauma in family, in school, and all the rest of it. And from a developmental trauma perspective, I noticed that some of the movements that we do when we dance, it feels like getting what that baby didn't get, you know, through this movements that give a lot of like deep touch and almost like that sense of holding, you know, that physical sense of holding that I think what I certainly lacked, many of us didn't necessarily get when we were younger. There's something that's really reparative about these movements. I also noticed it just helped me function. And I mean, literally function as in get up, manage my day, pay my bills, do the washing, make lunch, dinner, and breakfast for the kids. Like executive functioning is a major challenge. It's a challenge for people with ADHD and autism, with CPTSD, with maybe sometimes the brain injuries that are a result of addiction. I found that some of the movements that we do in dance helped me somehow function. It was almost as if my body was learning to do things step by step by learning these steps that literally go step by step. I found that helpful. And then, yeah, we'll get onto this as well. Something about embracing our own language, our movement language, like there's a big underexplored area, the trauma that autistic people have experienced, many autistic people and other people, you know, a lot of it coming from being forced to be other. You know, it's not okay to be you need to move in a different way, you need to talk in a different way, you have to make eye contact, you know, the way you are is not okay and you need to be different. And that can result in really severe trauma. And in dance and other art forms, art, music as well, but that's kind of been my particular one, we get access to a way of reclaiming our movements and then unshaming our movements, and B, a way of expressing without words, because for many of us, the trauma that we experience makes it really hard to speak sometimes. I appreciate I'm gabbling away now. But this is something that affects me also. Sometimes I've worked with people who have what we now call mutism, and I realized in doing so, oh, this actually happens to me too. But there's something about the frame of the arts which is kind of destigmatizing around working with this for me, rather than like, you need to learn to speak and you need to learn to talk. It's a very validating way, I think, of finding language. And then valuing sensitivity, like I spoke about, but also listening for the voice. Think about the big book, and there's that particular phrase in the big book: deep inside every man, woman, and child, there is the fundamental idea of God. And certainly, like from a codependency perspective, we're often looking out there, like higher power or whatever it is, spiritual connection is out there. Something about when we dance, my experience, might not be your experience, has been my experience, about listening to impulses that we have inside. Obviously, it can help us with like what we call interoception, which is a big thing also in trauma, which is like noticing what's going on inside your body, basically, plus where your body is in space. But for me, there's something about that connects me also to this rebuilding this trust between the thing that was broken when most of us were young, or when we went into addiction or mental illness or whatever we went into, the connection between me and some inner strength, a higher power. It gets broken, right? We're like empty selves. And for me, dance has been a way of coming back to that. Obviously looking at, exploring what our blocks are, the voice, what gets in the way of agency and creativity, and what gets in the way of us going, and like taking our ideas, whatever it is. Creativity isn't just making a dance piece or a work of art, right? It's living, isn't it? It's just being in the world, being of service, getting over all of the wasted years, the lost years, and being able to come out. So how dance can help us because when we're working with imagination and we're working with improvisation, we're opening up a space. And we know this about trauma recovery. Yes, it's about working with all the body states, right? The fight, flight, freeze, and all the rest of it. But that's not enough. Happy, joyous, and free. We need to also access this new space, these new possibilities, and how the arts can help us do that. So that was my experience. And so I went from, it was very embarrassing at first, retraining as a dancer. When most people finish, I had quite a few sessions where I was in tears. I'm glad I persevered with it, and through the help of my sponsor, was able to kind of really internalize this "it's never too late" idea. It's never too late to get to who we are and where we need to be.